Okay, I'm live now. What was I saying? See, I've lost my train of thought. Well, of course, that's how the memory problems are with after the brain damage. But um, I'm annoyed that they have not done the studies right with gender in the brain, and they've not tried to see if there's a difference. If the difference is well, no. See, they have done some brain studies that show that gay men are the brains of gay men are more similar to that of women. Well, guess what? A better version of that study would go and study flaming gay men or categorize them according to how they talked, how flaming and how feminine they talked. And then other gay men according to how masculine they were, and do the same thing for the women studied. And then see, does the femininity or masculinity in your speech itself correspond to brain differences? At which point, then you will have established much more clearly whether there really are gendered brain differences, because those men who are more feminine, talk more feminine, have more feminine brains, then it's biological. Then what causes femininity in speech is biological. It's hardwiring in the brain, which you can see because you can look at the different structures in the brain because you studied it, which they didn't do. And then once you have concluded that or seen that, then you can go and say, well, okay, doesn't that correspond to what interests they have and what they major in? Yes, it sure does. And then, you know, you can, go along with that. Well, black people studied and where are they selecting for the populations? Also, I remember, yes, like I'm very mathematical and scientific, but I have ADD and also have motivation issues and very athletic and musical, so I can't be bored. It like has to be. I need the different type of learning environment than a lot of the American colleges have, and also the way they do in American colleges. Well, that's the question. What's going on with black men in science? Why do they drop out and end up doing humanities? It's as if they're not studying it and they want everyone to conclude that it's because they're intellectually inferior. But they're not studying it right, which is fishy. Anyway, that if they have systemic racism where the black population is used to help corporations make vastly more profits than they would make otherwise, and academia is all complicit and corrupt and involved in it, and it looks like it is, and the race norming by the NFL is just an example of their corruption. If they really cared, they would object to that. And if they tried to object to that, it's absurd. Like even if you could argue black people are less intelligent than white people, the race norming, I mean, you can tell that you should be able to tell the difference between stupidity and brain damage from being hit in the head. That's like no excuse. There's no excuse for that other than that there's money and they're corrupt. And academia has gotten away with not objecting to it, and the media has gone and been complicit with covering that up for money. So if that's what's going on, and that's one good example, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, the fact that black people who are advanced, well, are they getting the stupider people? Are they actually going, and are there smarter black people out there that are not? See, I know what it's like being at Harvard and being smart, and but also having a love of science, and I don't know, being idealistic and wanting to do the right thing. They clobber you. Hmm. So, I mean, in Camille Paglia, just read what she writes about the herd instinct in academia, as well as the celebration of mediocrity. It's not just black people, it's nearly everyone. But I mean, if university and academia are mandating mediocrity because it's mediocre people who will go along with the crowd, go along with the herd, and anyone who is not mediocre is going to be uppity, and they cannot stand that this system as it is. They can't live with it that way. They, if you love science or whatever, you can't stand what they do. The corruption that forces everyone to engage in feigned stupidity, just because the business elite, there's this corporate oligarchy that's structured financially in just the right way so that all of that stupidity in each instance matters. Oh, and now it's time for me to go to why I think they may have, selected for dumbed down populations. I mean, as in less smart people were elevated over smarter people. And this might be more virulently done for black people than for white people because of what goes on with race being that much more financially important to the powers that be. When I was at Harvard, in the biology or something, there was this man who said something about, maybe it wasn't biology, he said something about women in biology, and there are these women in biology who, they're good at math. They can do all the right stuff. That's the kind of math you need to know to do well at, so as to be able to do the work necessary for corporations that they want done in biology, to have a job as a biologist. And this happens to be very boring work where you just run, I forgot what it is you run. You run one thing after the other, one experiment after the other, where I think you're trying to figure out, you run several different chemicals and see what they do. And it's just boring and monotonous. But you have to have enough of the math skills to be a reliable worker in that. However, and there are women who are very good at that, and they call them workhorses. These women, they're workhorses because they have just enough of those math skills to be very good at that, to be reliable. But they just cannot get the higher level math concepts. They're incapable of understanding the higher level math concepts. Those women make really good workhorses for the biology companies because their lack of higher level math skills means they're cheap. They cannot go point to math skills that will help them ask for and demand a higher salary amid our anti-discrimination laws. So it's extremely important that at the higher level math courses, they did poorly enough so they know their place. And their salaries are cheap enough so it works economically for these companies. This is because it is boring, monotonous work where, I don't know, you do 100,000 experiments maybe like less than 1% of them yield anything worth anything. But maybe that 1%, the needle in a haystack substance that they finally discover that may turn out to become a blockbuster drug worth billions. But they have to go through every single other needle in the haystack. They have to go through the whole haystack first before they find it. And this is an enormous amount of hours spent. Each hour has to be compensated well. You have to have, in order to make it work, you have to have women who did poorly at the higher level math, but are good enough at the lower level math, so they can do these jobs and be relied upon, but they can't get paid too much money so as to make it too expensive. It's the how much return is the needle going to provide for corporations, and they have to make a profit after paying for all that labor for the women to go through the whole haystack first before, So given that, him saying that, I think that would explain why they cannot and will not go and do any kind of studies of brain differences where it might be the case that the social environment matters. Like maybe women need to be studying with other women with whom they are willing to be more aggressive with, because I know you have to be aggressive and domineering and inclined to be that way to learn the math. With math, aggression and math comprehension go together. So women are aggressive with other women, and that means the parts of their brains capable of doing math suddenly kick in. They are submissive with men, and what happens is that those parts of their brain shut down. Now, with me, I was intimidated by Harvard math professors. So when I was talking to the math professors about math, that part of my brain shut down. See, I'm a man, but I'm still like that. The intimidation factor made my brain shut down. But then when I was with students playing dumb who were younger than me, it didn't shut down, and all of a sudden I became brilliant. But then I was too intimidated to be brilliant with the math professors. See, that may well be good enough for black men, to do less well in the math and science. And then what studies do they have out there? You're not going to be stupid. You're going to look up and say, the only studies out there show black people are stupid compared to whites. How did they? I don't know enough about those studies to know. See, they're saying the average IQ is 85. And I mean, I just think that in whites is 100. And I just think that my instinct tells me that is too big a disparity to not be rigged. Like maybe if it was 95 versus 100 or 93 versus 100, it would be like, yeah, okay, yeah, there's some differences. But if it's 85, what's the definition of retarded? That's oh damn, where's the YouTube? Is it here? Well, all I'll say is I am suspicious. Oh, where is the YouTube? Oh, live streaming. Here it is. I'm just suspicious. How did they do those studies? It's like the false rape accusations. And with that issue, I say, well, why did they do just one study, the Cannon study, which could be discredited and is not necessarily reliable, and they did not do more studies? I think the anti-discrimination laws are, and the degree to which corporations don't want to have to do major adjustments to them, are a motive. I think academia is going. Let's say there's differences between blacks and whites in terms of intelligence. 85 versus 100. I think that's my instinct is that that's rigged. Not that if they did the right studies, they would. If they really studied it right. Oh, and notice how, like, feminism goes, and they do these fake wage gap statistics and this fake false rate statistics, and then if you point it out, they go and say you're a misogynist. Why do they aggressively put out false statistics, and then they go and they clobber you if you are a good scientist? And they say, and they always try to say, "Oh, we're doing this on behalf of the minorities. You are denigrating," except I'm not denigrating them. I think they are trying to put. I don't know. I think that they would put. I think. What if they're trying to portray them as inferior corruptly? And they are that cynical. See, I hate this because there's no information out there, but I mentioned before in the last other video. Anyway, if it's that, regarding workhorses, if it is that important to academia that they have workhorses for biology, then they definitely are rigging everything so that women with confidence issues will get the bad enough grades at the higher level math so they get to be paid less for the corporations. Academia charges the same amount regardless. The corporations charge less because they pay you less because of your grades or whatever. So yeah, the guy at Harvard said it's women that do that. So I mean, they're definitely. I think there are gendered brain differences that make women somewhat less good at math, but I think what they're doing with the education is magnifying them, so as to, make the economics work, to make it fit for the corporations. And then, and they're probably doing something similar with minorities as well. So what other issue? My train of thought. I'm trying to remember. I have an appointment at 2, so let me just make sure. Yep, it was 2, not 12. Okay. So what do you have? I can't remember, but I think it was important what I wanted to remember. It just occurred to me that I don't think academia is so stupid not to have noticed that there are gendered brain differences that could show up by simply comparing how people talk and studying the brains of people grouped according to how they talk. I just think they are not doing that research because for some reason it's tied to why they're trying to say that all gender differences are socially constructed. I think what they're doing is, like, they go have a women in science campaign. Yeah, why are they trying to say gender differences are socially constructed? There's some reason why they do that. Well, I mean, then you can go. Then it serves as a basis for criminalizing masculinity, kind of, or also the whole discrimination, political correctness regime has gone, and their definition of racism has changed. It used to be the aura of exclusivity and elitism that you have on college campuses. That used to be what racism was. Racists were exclusive, and they were high up and mighty, and they were above black people, and they excluded them, and they were haughty, and they were cold, and they were formal, and they were arm's length with them. Now, racism is what? You go say some brusque, crude remark that's tone deaf, and that's racism or misogyny, which just so happens to be the working class pot. So in other words, you talk like a truck driver, and you don't have the. So they've reversed the definition of racism, and actually also when you get closer to people, you or make friends with them, and you're not at arm's length with them, you stop being formal and you start being more what you call familiar, which means you start using, well, it's not politically correct. You stop being politically correct. Political correctness is like a mandatory, they're making it mandatory to adopt the formal language that is used with people you keep at arm's length when it comes to minorities. When actually, if you got close enough to minorities, like we're sleeping with them all the time, those boundaries drop, and you would start to, you would start to say things that were not politically incorrect, that are not politically correct. So they've kind of reversed the definition of racism, but then masculinity is more crude and uses less polite language sometimes. It uses crude language sometimes. And then crude language is what the legal system relies upon as proof. If you want to prove discrimination, well, did the person use crude language? If you want to prove discrimination, were they haughty and condescending to you? You can tell they're racist because their tone they used was just, they acted like they looked down on you. Is that going to work for proof? I should ask a discrimination agency that. Is that going to work for proof? Oh no, they didn't say anything. They didn't make a foot, and they didn't put their foot in their mouth. I just could tell from their tone. So that there you have it. Okay, well, I think I'm done now. If there's anything I want to continue, it needs to be done later because I'm not remembering anymore.